Today we're going to install a high-def NES kit into our NES front loader. What does this do? It adds an HDMI port so you could plug it into a modern TV. And the thing about this is that it has boards and converters and stuff, and this isn't emulation in any way. That means there's no lag. This is the good stuff. Okay, here we go. I'm using the instructions provided on GameTech.us's site. That's very helpful of them. Round pin sockets, round pin headers, dual wipe sockets, interposer boards, main board, flat flex cables or ribbon cables, mounting screw and nut. When you purchase the kit, you could also get the cap upgrade here and also the LED. Look at that, it's blue. Isn't that cool? It's gonna be cool. Power wire. The foam piece listed in the instructions is only for the top loader. This is the front loader. Unplug the console and hold down the power button, press it in and out just like that to depower the capacitors that are still in there. They can give you a nasty shock even when it's unplugged, so you gotta de-energize them. Use a long neck Phillips 2 to get out the 6 screws on the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over there. If you try to use something like this, it won't be able to fit. You gotta get all the way through. Lift off the top. Normally there's a metal dust cover that goes over this, so apparently mine doesn't have it. Anyway, there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 screws to take those out and take it off. Remove the 2 screws holding down the RF module, there, and down there. Remove the 6 screws holding the actual cart thingy in place. Now, something to keep in mind here is that you see how they're two different colors? They're 2 different sizes too, so keep track of that. Usually the silver one is longer, and there's another silver one on this side, and the rest are the bronze color. There's a little tab under here, so what you want to do to clear this peg is you want to lift up and pull forward to release this connector. Slide the connector off the back. Disconnect the 3 connectors. 1, 2, 3. Now the motherboard is free, so let's flip it over, and this dust shield won't be going back on, so we can take that off and store it somewhere. Now we're going to do the cap replacement kit. You know, after 30 years, these caps dry out and they start blowing up real easy. So first step is you want to take this cover off here. So you wanted to solder the main cap first. It's these 2 pins here. You can tell because they correspond to this cap that's sticking through the shield here. So you turn that over, and you get your soldering iron here, and you touch that, suck it out, touch that, suck it out, and here we go. The reason I don't show too much is because I'm filming with one hand and doing shit with the other, so it makes it's hard. Now that I've soldered sucked the holes, one thing that usually happens when you solder suck is that the pin will get stuck to one side, so you can just take your heat iron and free them just like that. There we go. Over the course of the life of the Nintendo, they have different power makers here, so this is a Mitsu, whatever. So I'll link that down below, a link to find where all the proper cap locations, so it's going to be a little different for everybody. Now, most of these little guys can actually be stuck in through the hole, but for me, you know, I'm just going to bend this up, and we're going to take a look inside, and that'll make things a little easier. With the shield bent up, you can see what version of the power supply you have right there on the PCB, the T3, I got this one right here. So now we'll go to the website, and we'll see there's the same one there, which caps go where, and even a little picture, all the way over there, so we can see. I'll have this link down in the comments so you can figure out what needs to go where. Be careful when melting the solder and using the solder sucker on a space like this. You can see the capacitor on the back is solder bridged right to the connector, so if you heat all that up and you suck it up, you might suck off the little piece here, so be careful. You're definitely going to need some bent needle nose pliers to get the caps in and out of there. Yeah, it's a tight fit. Be sure to read the caps too to be sure that you're putting in the right ones into the same spot. Now the farad rating, you got to be sure that's the same, but the volt is a maximum volt rating. So if you go over in the voltage, that's okay. Electrolytic capacitors are polarized, meaning they have a plus and a negative side. You can't just stick them in any way you want. See the stripe on the side? There's always going to be a stripe on these things. That's the negative side, and on the PCB, you can see the big white side. That is the negative side. So that means that this should go like that, right in there. You see that? Stripe to white. Yeah. The negative lead is also always shorter than the positive lead too. When you're putting the caps in the hole, be sure that the cap itself doesn't twist, because that'll twist the leads on the bottom, and if they touch like that, oh, you're gonna be in for a bad time. So be sure it goes in straight and doesn't turn. When trying to snake back in the replacements, twisting the legs is good, so you can kind of, you know, You get it in there and you pivot it up like that. I like to bend the leads over to hold the cap in place when things are upside down. I don't know if that's correct procedure, but I don't know. It works for me. Anyway, solder it all back in. Be sure to check that solder bridge. You actually want it like that. Not the two legs together, but to those two capacitors. And yeah, there we go. Caps replaced. The best tool in the industry is a pair of flush cutters, and use them to cut the leads after you're done soldering the caps back in. Save one of the snipped legs, we'll need it for later. Not every power supply version uses all the caps. I had these two left over, and that's okay. Put the bottom cover back on, and then unbend your top cover if you did not done that. And then with your old capacitors, don't throw them in the trash. You gotta recycle them like most electronics. Okay, moving on. Now both the CPU and the PPU need to be unsoldered from the motherboard. Now if we take a look on the other side, holy crap, that's a lot of pins. All of those, all of those, all of those, and all of those. One trick is to actually add a little bit of solder, because this is 30-year-old crap, and then add a little bit of solder, and then heat it up and solder suck it out. Take this slow. It is long and boring, and there's no way around it. But if you go too fast, you can actually rip the vias right out of the board, and then you're really screwed. So, let's get going. As you're desoldering and using your solder sucker, what you want to see is like the little black circle. That means that all the solder is gone on that side. But even if you see that, be sure to flip it over. And you can see that some of the pins still have a little gray blob on the top, so you got to be sure that that's gone too. And once you do that, you can take a little, your thing that you use to put the caps in, and you can wiggle around each pin to be sure that it's not touching either side. That way it's actually free. You might be wondering why some pins are trickier than others. They're more stubborn to come out, like this guy right here. That's because that's the ground pin. That is connected to the entire ground plane. See all of this? That's all metal. So there you got a lot of thermal mass that you need to heat up. So it takes a long time. Don't rush that. That is, I guess you could say that's a special pin. But you see it's connected to all of that. As you work the pins, you'll get a feeling for which ones are free and which ones are still hanging on. You'll give them a little tug. You see, that's a lot. That one's free. This one. Almost nothing. That one's still attached. Be careful. Keep going. Start wiggling it from the sides, and you could be able to tell if the pins are coming out or not. And then alright, there we got one side. That'll make the other side easier to get to now. Now that one side is up, and the other side might still be stuck down because of those tricky ground pins, what you can do is apply heat to one side and gently pull. Once the chips are out, you can use your soldering iron to clean off any solder that are on the things, because you're going to need these straight, because we got to put them into something soon. And, and if they're a little bent, be sure to gently put them back into shape. And also on here, for all these holes that might have a little bit of solder, just take your soldering iron right there and touch them up a little bit to clear them up, because we got to put something in here soon. We'll use the chips as a guide for the round pin header, so slot in 20 of them on here and snap off the extras. If you're having trouble getting the sockets to fit into the holes, use your soldering iron and your solder sucker to be sure that the holes are clean. Do that with the other chip as well, and then solder both pin headers into the thing and into the PCB board. They should stay nice and tight. Do the outside 1, 2, 3, 4 first, and then do the rest. If you want to region-free your NES, now's the time. See this little chip right here? You want to cut pin 4. See the little dot? That shows pin 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth pin that connects to the ground, you got to cut that and you'll be region free. Good to go. It might be tricky, but I cut it near the bottom and then bend the tab up. That way, if I ever need to put it back down, I could bend it down and solder it together. Now's a good time to test it and make sure that you didn't break anything. Looks like we're rocking and rolling. Unscrew the 7805 power regulator. Then desolder it with the 3 pins. Remove the CPU and the PPU from the sockets now. Be careful. The PPU interposer board will hit these 2 caps here. That guy and that guy. So what you want to do is underneath heat up the legs of this one and bend it flat this way so it's flush against the board. The ceramic cap can be kind of live under here, right under the board, over up. Oh, well, there you go. If you want the original outputs to work, the composite and whatever, you got to remove this little guy right there, Q1. See, it says the ECB on it. Oh god, I'm sorry, my camera won't focus. But yeah, that little black guy right there, take that out. If you still want it. If you don't, yeah, whatever. Now, using one of the legs that you cut off the capacitors before, use it to bridge the outside holes, which are E and B's. Put that little wire between those two, and then solder it on the back there. Print out and cut out the template. I'll put a link in the description. On the back of the lower shell, put the template on the back where the receiver and all that stuff is, and use a Sharpie to mark the very little bit of the sticker that hangs over. We'll need to trim that. Put a piece of tape over the sticker, then get a really sharp blade and get under the sticker and slowly and carefully pull it up. Now cut off the extra tape and cut out the little notch. Use a Sharpie and mark the outline of the HDMI hole. Using a 3/32 bit or 3 millimeters or something else small, drill 3 holes across the middle of the HDMI port. Now use your flush cutters to cut this away, and a nice rough cut. You don't have to finalize it right now. Once you have the whole rough cut, however the hell you did it, something like that, turn it over and you want to take down this post here. Take it down flush. On the back of the main board, flush cut these 2 little nubbins, this guy and that guy. Now you want to start test fitting and cutting until the HDMI port is flush with the chassis. Do a little bit at a time. It's always easier to cut material, not add material. Now that it's sitting flush, use a 1/8 or a 3 millimeter drill bit to drill holes there and there to mount it. You want nuts that are smaller than the feet so it doesn't wobble. Good luck. I used some M3 cap head bolts so they're a little more flush coming up. Now, this one that might be a mistake right there because of how close it is to the thing. Let's see. Here on the back. See a nice cap head bolt? They sit lower than the feet, so, it won't wobble. Install the header pins into the sockets, 20 on each row. Next, line up the imposer boards and put them on. Now, here's something very important here. First, notice this little mark that lines up with the mark on the silk screen on the board. See? That way. Next, you want, these 2 boards are different. Keep this in mind. You want these pins that are coming through right how on the NES line. See that? NES outside, inside. But on here, the NES lines are on the inside and outside on different things. Keep that in mind. So, yeah, get it right. Now solder all 80 of the pins, all of them. Flush cut down the inside rows, this one and this one. That way the sockets that sit on top can sit flush. Take the sockets off. Now take the 2 wipe sockets, and you notice there's a little indentation right on the end of that one. That lines up with the with that mark on the board. Put it in. Flip it over! Solder all the pins. Be sure the little feet actually came through. There's not much play in them, and they're kind of fragile, so they might get crushed down by accident. So do that for this one and the other board. If you're doing the sexy blue light replacement LED, first thing you gotta do is unscrew this mount there and under there. LEDs only go in one way, otherwise they won't work. You see on the 2 sides are different. One is like the hammer and anvil, and see the anvil side's the negative. It's also the short leg. And you see in here the anvil side is on this side, so you got to put this in just like that. So on the back here, desolder it and put this one in there. Pull it straight out. Put the blue one in. Negative side on the right there. Bend the legs. Stick them through. Do a better job than I did. Solder it down. Done. Put it back in. Screw it back in. Unlock the connectors by just sliding them out a little bit on the 2 boards. The shorter cable goes into the PPU, and the longer one goes into the CPU. If you got 2 long ones, that's okay. The cables go down and then lock it in. Insert the interpoles into the sockets. There we go. Yeah. Now put the chips into the sockets. Keyed. See that goes on the left side like the marks on the board and the silk screen on the Mobo. The RP2A0, that is the CPU. And the RP2CO is the PPU. Just like that. Well, I mean, you put them in. Strip about this much of the wire. Solder the wires onto where the LM7805 regulator used to go. The outside hole is not used. The middle one is ground, and the outside one, that's the voltage. So keep the red on the that one, and yeah. Solder the other end of the wires to the board. That one's VIN, and that pad is ground. Plug in the other end of the ribbon cables into the board. PPU, CPU. Use the provided screw and nut and for the holding pattern there. the hole in the back that you're not supposed to drill. I drilled it, and it's okay, it's alright. It's under the cable if it's okay. Plug the 3 connectors back in. This is player 1, that's on the front, and player 2 is the one on the side, and that's also on the side, and then set the whole thing, into its case. Lift up the back a little bit to slide on the ZIF connector, and with the wings go down. Lift up the motherboard from the front so you can slide the insertion thingy onto the back. Remember, there's a lip under there that has to go under the PCB. 2 screws into the power. 1, 2. 6 screws go back into the connector with the longer screw going into the silver longer one going into that one and that one. The top dust shield would go on next if I had one. Also remember that this screw post is no longer there. Put the top back on and screw in the 6 case screws. Plug everything in and turn it on. And then you can press left and select to bring up the menu for the for the high def. See, and then now you can set all your options and check the firmware. This one happens to be up to date, blah, 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 blah. There you go, done! My thoughts on the kit are that it's, once again, it's a pretty good kit. It makes the output to the TV for the Nintendo look absolutely amazing, the best I've ever seen a Nintendo look. Now, there's only 2 little quirks that are kind of eh. The first is that the flex cables can pull out of their sockets pretty easy. I ended up putting a little dab of hot glue on all 4 of them to keep them in. And so if you put everything back together again and it doesn't work, chances are that one of those cables came out. Second thing to notice is, watch this, we power it on, and 1, 2, 3. Okay. See, there's a 3-second delay, which is normal when turning it on. Now, that's pretty good in comparison to modern consoles and computers and things like that, but if you're used to the old school Nintendo, you might think something's wrong. That's okay. I just wish they mentioned that somewhere in the instructions, and, whoever you give it to or sell it to, or you yourself, whoever uses it, they have to understand that that's part of the thing. That's okay.